Good evening, everyone. You're very welcome to the fifth installment of our coach development webinars we've been running for the clubs and the members. I'm delighted this evening to be joined by Kristian Vittinghus, who is former number 8 in the world in men's singles from Denmark. And he also has multiple medals in European men's mixed team championships, Thomas Cup medals, European junior medals. So we're delighted to be joined by Hans this evening. We're going to take you through a short presentation from Hans. He's going to take you through a little bit about himself and his career, and then a little bit about some coaching aspects of that and what he's done and who he's worked with. And then from there, we're going to move on to probably a longer period of questions and answers than we usually would have on these, because I know there'll be a lot of questions for Hans. And we've had some people ask questions in advance of it as well, which is nice. We got sent a few questions for people that couldn't make it, which is nice to see. So we are recording the session as well. We do have everyone's mics and cameras turned off just so we can keep things running quite smoothly. So just bear that in mind. But we are going to use the chat function for questions. So if at any point you have questions, you can put them into that. I'll monitor them, and then we'll get to them once Hans is finished going through his slides. So without further ado, I'll pass it over to HK, as most people would call him, I think, and I'll let you take it away. Okay.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks a lot, Craig. And nice to meet all of you, even though I cannot see your faces or really talk to you that way. But I'm very glad I got the opportunity to be here. First of all, I just want to apologize for my PowerPoint skills. They're not the best. I just found a template, so I hope this will work for you. And I tried to keep it in green colors because it's Ireland, obviously. So no complaints about the PowerPoint presentation. Hopefully what I tell you guys will be interesting and don't look too much on the layout. As Craig said, this is the agenda, or like my presentation for today. I'll just do like very short introduction. Then I will tell you a little bit about my view or perspective on coaching kids. We'll move on to club coaching, and at the end, the national team level coaching. I have quite a bit of experience with all 3 levels. And as Craig said, at the end, we will do questions, and you don't have to ask something about the stuff I've been on. You can ask anything you want. Basically, I'm open to answer anything. So yeah, who am I? As Craig said, I was world ranked number 8 in men's singles. I won Thomas Cup, which is for sure the highlight of my career. I've had some pretty decent results, but there's no doubt in my mind that Thomas Cup, when we won that in 2016, is far beyond the favorite moment of my career. We had this history with the tournament that Denmark had lost 8 finals throughout the tournament's history. We never won the gold, so we kind of felt like there was this curse over Danish badminton that we just couldn't get this gold medal. So when we finally clinched that in 2016, it wasn't just like a win for me. I got to win the final deciding match, which was obviously amazing. And as you see on the photo, I got to lift the trophy as well. But we kind of felt like we were part of something greater and bigger than just ourselves, and got messages from so many legends in Danish badminton that said like, thanks for finally getting this gold medal. So that's far beyond the top achievement of my career, even though I'm also very proud of all the other achievements. But what I do now, so I stopped my international badminton career in August or September last year. That doesn't mean I stopped my badminton. I'm still playing part-time. I play the Danish badminton league, I play the French badminton league, and for the past year, actually also the Swedish. So I'm still pretty active. I still train 3-4 times a week on court and a couple of times a week in the gym. So I would consider myself being a part-time professional, just not playing the international tournaments anymore. I'm devoting more of my time now to coaching. I already started doing that in the final year of my career, and also all the way through my junior years and the first years of my senior career, I still did some part-time coaching. But right now I'm coaching in the local club. I'm coaching 3 to 7 year olds in something we call Miniton. Mainly, the motivation is that my son is part of the team, so that's why I got involved with that. I'm also coaching in the club that I play for, which is in Copenhagen, where I coach anything from 14 to, we actually have one who's a world senior champion who's 46, I think. So it's players in all ages basically, and anything from mid level in Denmark up until the highest level. So players that are playing international tournaments and Danish league matches. Then I also do some training with the Polish national team. I have a deal with them where I go there as like some sort of consultant every now and then. I do 20-25 days a year where I go to work with their national team men's singles and women's singles players. So I also get some experience from that, and it's actually, to be honest, for me, in coaching terms, I think that's the most interesting role I have at the moment, because it forces me to think a lot about why we do stuff the way we do in Denmark. Because obviously we do things differently in Poland, and they're asking a lot of questions when I'm there. They try to get a lot out of me, and it forces me to not just like say, oh, we do it like this or this or that, but also actually to think about why are we doing it that way, so I can make them understand better the reasons behind it. Apart from that, I do a bit of commentary on Danish TV every now and then. I did the World Championships last year. I've done on a few other occasions, the past 3 Olympics actually. I do podcasting on my own and with Anders Antonsen. We have the Badminton Experience on YouTube, so you guys can check that out if you are not tired of listening to me after today. And finally, I'll say I also do club visits. So I go to different clubs in Denmark and deliver speeches like this, or coaching kids, or even coaching their adult players as well, on just like a 2, 3, 4 hour sessions, all over the country. So my day-to-day life is still very much centered about badminton, and I hope it's gonna stay that way, because it is what I love to do, and I'm pretty certain that I'm gonna carry on playing for my entire life. At least I hope so. I'm not gonna stop that. So yeah, that would be like my introduction of myself, what I have done in the past and what I'm doing now. So now I'll just take a sip of water, and then we'll go straight into the thing we're really here for, my perspective on coaching. So we'll start with the part about coaching kids, and as I said, it's, by the way, it's my son Vincent. You see on the right, he's 5 on this photo. He's 6 now, and I'm coaching his group of players, where they are kids from 3 to 7 years old. We have this concept called Miniton. I don't know if you know it in Ireland or if you do something similar, but what we focus on, I would say, like the most important thing is that it's fun to be there. Not that it's fun to play badminton, but just fun to be there. It's the main objective for us, that we want to create an environment where the kids have fun coming. We want them to be comfortable being in the hall. We of course do lots of different exercises with a badminton racket. We do some with a balloon, some with a shuttle, of course, but we also do lots of stuff that has got nothing to do with a badminton racket. It's I would say close to 50-50, and maybe even only like 40% badminton and 60% just playing or doing other kind of stuff. But our main objective, and I would say the only thing that's really important for us, is to make sure that it's fun, because we want the kids to come back. We don't want them to become great badminton players at that age. We just want them to have fun and grow some kind of interest in being in a badminton hall. Apart from that, coordination and movement is our second focus. We introduce them to the right grip and stuff like that, but the important thing is that we teach them balance, coordination, movement, all this kind of stuff, basically to make them I think it's it's early to say, but because of like the lack of the right word in English, I would say like we try to make them better athletes. I know it's very early to say that from 3 to 7 years old, but I hope you get what I mean. That like we try to just develop their athletic skills in some way, and not so much their badminton skills. It's something I'm gonna come back to also on the in the next section, where we're gonna talk about club players. But already at this age, at 7 years old, we actually focus on it a lot. The third bullet point I put on here, I think it relates a lot, correlates a lot to the first one, fun, that we give a lot of freedom and we try to involve the kids a lot. So we let them choose what is the next game we're going to play, what are we going to do today, to try and, of course, we give them some options and then they can choose from it themselves. But that kind of freedom, and like it gives them a feeling that they also get to decide what we are doing, and that simply just makes it more fun. So that's basically why we have it in. We have a lot of experience that it's more fun for them if they actually get to be involved in the process of what we're going to do, even though they're still obviously very young. So it's not like we just put it out there, what are we going to do, but like give them 2, 3, 4 options, and then we basically let them choose what we're going to do. And they have a pretty cool imagination, so sometimes we do stuff that I didn't really imagine, because I'm already an old boring guy. So it's actually also fun for us adults. So I think that's the three main things for us, and from my perspective, that's the three most important things. The last two, I think they also, it's a little bit similar. So like it's just encouragement all the time, even if the kid is maybe not having like the right grip, or maybe launching on the wrong leg or stuff like that. If they hit the shuttle, if they feel success, just encourage them, and that way you create an environment where they think it's fun to be, and then they want to learn, and they will just slowly grow. And that's the final thing I will say, that it's okay to grow very slowly. And I think it's something that's being tested for me every single time I go, because the guy you see on the right, my son Vincent, he's probably the guy in the hall that wants to learn badminton the least. So he wants to go to the hall every time. He always asks if he can come, but as soon as we start doing badminton exercises or anything where he needs to learn something with badminton, he's like, yeah, I'm not gonna do that. So he just wants to run around in the hall and have fun and stuff. And then every now and then, here and there, I can put in sets where we hit the shuttle 10, 15 times. And he's getting better just from that. So we can go to a training where he's hitting the shuttle 15 times, and that's it. But it's enough, and he's growing slowly. And obviously I'm a more I have a mindset where you just want to like play a lot and you want to grow and stuff. But I'm very eager on not like controlling his not putting my ambition for him on him. So just let him grow in the speed he wants to. And if he doesn't want to play badminton next year, then we're going to play some different sport. But it's not only for my son, it's for all the kids. So we need to allow them to just grow at their own pace. It sounds very simple, but it's not that easy to do in practice, I think. And then I just put more fun at the end, and that's only to stress that it is the main thing. The main thing with kids is not to teach them how to hold the forehand grip or what the backhand grip is, or lunging on the right leg. Yes, that's also part of it, but it's not the main thing. The main thing is simply to create an environment where they have fun. Then they will learn badminton in the long run, and they will have plenty of time to develop. So get them to want to be in the hall, get them to want to enjoy badminton in their own way, and then slowly you can add small pieces and teach them along the way. I hope that all made sense, and that I'm not talking too fast. But if it didn't make sense, then write down some questions, and we'll take it when we get to the questions a little bit later. I'll spend a bit more time on the next two phases, as I think I have a little bit more expertise in that area, and I also imagine it's what you guys will find a bit more interesting from me today. No, and I need to do like this. So coaching at club level, and the picture you see here is from the club I play for right now, Hvidovre. We play in the best league in Denmark, but we also have 3 senior teams lower. So we have 4 teams. In our lowest one is in, I think we just moved down to 8th division actually. So we have players at all levels. Obviously, the guys on the team is that's the first team. I don't know if you recognize the guy on the left, but that's Kim Astrup. So world silver medalist at the last World Championships. You also have Julian Karaki in the middle next to me, the best Belgian player. So there's a few world-class players in that photo. But in general, I would say working with club level players, from my perspective, and where I see a huge difference compared to coaching high level players from national team, is that it's so important to teach them how to control the basic stuff in badminton. And with the basic stuff, I'm down to a level where we're just saying clear, drop, lob, stuff like that. It's very simple shots, smash, stuff like that. But it's so simple, it's so basic, and I think it's being forgotten a lot in our club system as well, because a lot of the players, they're very focused on, they want to be able to score points and like hit the lines all the time, and they want to create all the time. It's one of the things I really work on the most with my players in the club, that sometimes it's actually okay to let your opponent beat themselves instead of you're actually beating yourself by just making mistakes and bad choices all the time. So like controlling the basics, being able to play all the basic shots with quality, I think is a main component when you coach club players, that you need to stress how important it is and how much success it can actually give these players. And even if it's not players with a playing style of just like playing rallying game, it's still a thing they need to learn how to control, also to be better at playing aggressively, because again, it gives them more opportunities if they are actually able to control the basics. So it is something I focus on the most in my work with these players. How we do it specifically, we can also get into that in the questions. I would rather that you actually ask the questions that you really want the answers to, than I'm trying to sit here and guess what you want to hear. So feel free to ask about it. One thing I want to say about controlling the basics is that a very basic thing that a lot of players struggle with is playing shots under pressure with your back to the net. So when you're in the deep corners and the baseline and you have to hit a defensive shot where you have your back turned towards the net, so many players panic when they're in that situation and think they have to do something crazy, like a very hard drive, or they have to hit the clears away. It's the one exercise I spend the most time on is just 2 against 1, 2 feeders at the net, or a little bit behind the short service line, mid-court play, and lift over the guy working on the other side. I'm sure you guys probably know the exercise, but I see a lot of players at club level doing it where they think, okay, we need to push the lifts very hard and like put the stress level very, very high. I actually prefer that you take the stress level down to like 80-90%, to make sure that you teach your player to actually be a little bit more in control when you're in that situation, and be able to relax, because the more relaxed you are, the better you'll be able to control one of the most basic shots, which is the defensive shot you have to play in those deep corners with your back against the net. Again, I hope it made sense. If not, ask about it when we get to the questions. So yeah, but that's the first thing, controlling the basics. The second thing we work a lot on is, as I said before, with coaching kids, is movement. We do a bit more of it with these players from 14 and as I said, up to 40 years old, because it is again a very what would we say, like it's a key thing if you want to play good badminton, that you're able to move. that you're able to cover the court. If you're always in a little bit late, or if you're in bad balance, it just makes everything harder. It makes your shots harder. It makes your decisions a lot harder because you're in a worse position. So a lot of players with even bad technique, they will have a good chance to beat better technical players if they actually just move better. So we almost do no trainings in my club where we don't have some element of like footwork training or movement training, coordination, some kind of stuff. It doesn't have to be half an hour or anything, but it can be 5 minutes. It can be sometimes 15, sometimes 20 minutes, but it's an element in almost every single training because it's a key element if you want to be a good badminton player. And it's not only singles players, it's also for doubles players. And I believe it's not only for high level badminton players, it's at all levels. If you can control the basics and you can do and you can move well, then you will already get the third bullet point we have here, consistency. And that is just key to success at this level. If you have consistency, you will be in a lot of situations where, again, your opponent will your opponent will in many ways beat themselves by making bad mistakes, or they will play shots with bad quality that you can then punish. But it's the first thing I experienced when I came to Vidå, my Danish club, was that it was the complete opposite, actually, that my players were the ones always trying to score points and always trying to create, and that way actually gifting a lot of points to their opponents. So yeah, those 3 bullet points are like the playing wise thing, I would say, is what we focus on the most, and is the most important part. The next 2 has more to do with what I believe is important as a coach at the club level. So the first thing, adaptability. And it's not to put just a big fluffy word in there. I think it's actually I think it's very important and very true that one of the key things you have to have as a coach is the ability to adapt. At least at my club, because we have, as I said, many different levels of players. So the same exercise doesn't necessarily work well for every single player. So you have to be able to adapt that way. We also have the challenge of sometimes a player wants to still do some training even though they're a little bit injured, so maybe they can't really follow a normal schedule, but they still pay money to play in the club. You still have to be able to have them as part of the training. So in that way, adaptability is very important. But I would actually say in the way it's most important is that you cannot work, or you cannot expect that working with 2 players, if you give them the same tools and the same kind of coaching, works well with both players or all players. They're very, very different. That also goes to high level players. It's one of the most fascinating things for me with coaching, and I've experienced it a lot on the national team. I've seen it I was part of the national team for 18 years, so I've been there with Peter Gade, Kenneth Jonassen, Jan Jørgensen, now Victor Axelsen and Antonsen. And the fascinating thing is that we all do things a little bit differently. We have different mindsets. So you cannot just say like this recipe, or like put people down in a box and say, if you do this kind of training, you will be good. Yes, of course, you can raise the level a little bit for some, but to reach the full potential for every single player, you will need to be able to adapt to the person's personality traits and all this kind of stuff. Maybe it's basic knowledge, but it's impossible to talk about at least my perspective on coaching without mentioning it, because I think it's one of the reasons why I think, for me, Kenneth Jonassen, the current national head coach in Denmark, he's the best coach I've ever been working with, because he's phenomenal at adapting to every single player, adapting to the differences I have both mentally but also physically, compared to a guy like Victor, who he has also been coaching for many years. So so I had to put it in there. The 25 50 25 rule that I put on, again, I don't know if it's something you've heard about before. I think for many Danish clubs it's something at least we try to abide to. It's not easy and it's not possible to do it all the time, but what it basically means is that we try to put the players when they do sparring, so for example 2 against 1 or 1 against 1 or any kind of drill, basically we try to have them spar with better players 25% of the time. 50% of the time they spar with players around their own level, and 25% of the time they spar with players that are below their own level. um, and I think there's many benefits from that. First of all, it gives a great environment in terms of everyone feels like they're giving something, but they also receive something. So it's a good way to make sure that everyone feels like they're part of a group, instead of just keeping the best players on the same court all the time, the second best on the second court all the time. We try to mix it up that way, and then of course again, some of the time we have the best players together, but we try to abide to this 25 50 25 rule. Um, Another thing that's really beneficial from it is that if you say you're the best player in the club, um, you will of course be training more with players below your own level, but you can actually learn a lot from that, because I feel like there's a lot of players who are very good at playing against very good players, where they automatically get like high pace and high level badminton, and they just basically need to react to that. But a lot of them are not very good when they need to actually inject the pace on their own, that when they need to set the standard in the match. So in that way, it's a good way to work on that when you actually play with players below your own level. It's also good exercise in taking responsibility in the exercises, and it's just in many ways a good test to see, or to teach players how to be more focused and take responsibility of also their own training, because you can get a lot out of training also with worse players. I'm not saying we do it perfect with that in Denmark, but it is a key thing we focus on in club training, and I think it is. I don't know if you can say the secrets to why we are very good at badminton in Denmark, but I think it's one of the main reasons to it is because of the environment we have in the clubs, where everyone is trying to help raise the level for everyone, because we know that we need each other to push ourselves to the next level. Right. The final two ones I put on is more doesn't equal better. And that's it's because it's one of the things I always get asked the most when I go out to visit clubs or do sessions like these. Like if I had one advice that I wanted to give to a young player, and I always say that badminton needs to be fun, and training more isn't necessarily the same as saying you will become better. Uh, I've seen so many players where coaches are trying to put on them to like, we need to do more, we need to train harder, we need to do this and we need to do that. And of course, that's also part of a coach job to push your player a little bit to go to the next level. But in general, it's much more important with club level players, and especially young players, to make sure that they still think badminton is fun. And if training once more a week or twice more a week means that they lose a little bit of the motivation, or they start to feel that badminton is a little bit less fun and just like a little bit too hard, then I would cut away that training straight away, because I don't believe you will develop at your best rate if you don't find badminton the most possible fun. The more fun you find it, the more you will develop, the more you will naturally develop, just from wanting to play more and like playing with more intensity and more joy in training. That just it kind of feeds development out of it. So I always say that like it's not necessarily better to train more. I have so many examples of it where I just see guys that are training maybe 3 or 4 times, they actually develop more than guys that are training 6, 7, 8 times who just believe that. But we need to train more and more and more. Again, I need to stress that this is I would say mainly for club players. If we go to national team coaching, I think it's a little bit different, or players that are really trying to go to the highest level. There's still some truth to it, but it is a key thing that fun has to be the main objective if you want to develop in badminton. If you don't find it fun, and it doesn't mean that you need to be running around in each session and laughing and having fun that way, but I hope you guys get what I mean, that it has to be fun in some way to play. If not, then over time you will lose your motivation and you will stop developing and not becoming a better badminton player. And that's the general goal for us in the club. It's not to win the Danish league or become Danish champions necessarily. Of course, that would be great. But what we really care about if is to create the correct training environment and develop our players. So if our players develop, we are doing our job the correct way. Right, short water break. And I think I'm doing okay with time. If not, then Craig, you will just have to interrupt and say if I need to.
All good at the
All
moment.
right, that's
doing
great.
good.
That's great. Yeah. So moving on to the part about national team level coaching, and it can also be a little bit below national team level, but like in general, I would say players with very high expectations and goals. So players that want to play on the international circuit, that wants to become international level. I would probably, maybe I should have named that international level coaching. The biggest difference I see here compared to club level is that with this kind of players, you can expect a little bit more in terms of them being able to control basic stuff. Because if you cannot do that, um, I have to say that then you can forget about being an international player. You need to be able to control the basic stuff at a pretty high level. If not, then you will be exposed very quickly when you go on the international circuit and start competing there. So you can expect a little bit more from the players that way, which is also why I put this that you can put more layers to the exercises in there. And it's this is also where the guy you see in the right, Kenneth, really excels, and where I say that he's very good with the adaptability. Because if you take an example, if we do 2-against-1 defense, so it can be one guy in the front, one guy in the back, or it can be the two feeders side by side, and the guy working just doing defense. The way I need to do it compared to the way Victor needs to do it, or Antonsen or Gemke, it can be very different. So of course we still start with a high serve and we into defense, but when I play badminton, I play my defense a little bit differently compared to a guy like Antonsen. I'm very good at creating angles in my defense. So when, especially if people smash me in my forehand, I'm very good at turning it cross court. A little bit, not so much, a little bit less on my backhand side. Where Anas, he's more, how can you describe that? Like a little bit more just surviving in his defense, where I actually try and invite a lot into the defensive position. So I give away the initiative to be more defensive and try to counter my opponent. And that also means that when we do 2-against-1 defense in the national team, we don't focus on the same stuff. Victor is also a good example. Like he's very good with long defense, and he's very aggressive in his defense. So his base position is much further up the court compared to me, and it's different approaches, and you can expect that for players at this level, or you should expect that, because one of the key things from players at this level is that you should make sure, and I don't know why I didn't put it in here with the bullet points, but you should make sure that they know what their game style is or what the game plan is. So in a perfect world, if they went on court and played against someone they didn't know anything about, they should know what it is they want to do. So in a perfect world where your opponent just plays a neutral game, what do you want to do? So for me, I see myself as a counter-attacking player. Again, I invite into defense quite a lot. I know I'm very good at that. If I can play 1-2 defensive shots and frustrate my opponent that way, then I can pounce on the chance if they then make a lift with bad quality, and that's where my counter-attacking abilities come in. So I think it's a key element for international level players that they are actually aware of what is the game style, what is the game plan, and of course it's part of the coaching job or coaching task to help figure out what is going to be the game plan. But I think it's very important that you make sure you have one, because it doesn't mean you cannot divert from it a little bit, and you of course you change some things depending on who you play, but overall you need to know what your game plan is, what your strengths are, and how to incorporate that in your game. Yeah, I think that pretty much covers like the more layers to exercise, also like more individualized. So it's a little bit into that, but with that I actually mean more that when you have club training, you do a lot of the same exercise. So like everyone is going to do 2 against 1 defense, or 1 against 1 defense, whatever. When you go to the higher level, you need to be able to, in the training sessions, to say, okay, in this next block of 30 minutes or whatever, one guy is doing this exercise, another guy is doing a different exercise. So individualize it a lot that way, because again, for Victor, it doesn't make the same amount of sense, if you can say it that way, to do a lot of defense, because he's playing a lot on his at least he used to playing a lot on his strengths and his attack. He's become a little bit more defensive over the last few years. But if you compare it to me, I need to do a lot of defense to maintain my skills there, and keep making sure that it's a strong part of my game. For him, it will be more focused on setting up his attack, because he is much better at putting the shuttle on the floor than I am. So you need to be able to individualize the training a bit more. The good thing is that, as I said before, you can expect more from these players. So you can also expect them to help you in that way, to like keep focus on what's important to work on right now. It doesn't have to come from you only, and I would actually say it shouldn't come from you only, because if it only comes from you, I very much doubt that the player is then 100%, like they need to 100% believe it and trust it, that it's the right way to go. So that's why it's very important that you're on the same page in that respect. I hope it still makes sense. It's difficult to read the room when I can't see you guys, but again, ask any questions you want afterwards. Higher intensity, I also put that there, because in general, when you get a club player in the national team setup, for example, it's not that they don't know the exercises. They know almost all the exercises we do. Of course, there's a few more layers to them. So like we have exercises where there's options in the exercise. So instead of just being defense or offense, there's like certain setups where the exercise can go in different directions depending on what the guy working is doing. So if he chooses in a certain situation to clear, then this thing has to happen. Or if he chooses to drop in that situation, another thing has to happen. So there's more layers to it that way, but it also it ups the intensity quite a lot, and that's what people struggle with the most, because you cannot just like go on autopilot and just think, okay, we're just gonna go all out, do defense, offense, high pace, whatever. You need to actually really be into the game and focus, and have like 100% concentration, because you need to be aware when the right situation arises. Oh, what do I need to remember to do here? What are the options that I have? So you are not only stressing people in the physical part with the legs and the condition and everything, you're also stressing their mind, which is a little bit underrated, I think. And it's one thing that I always experience like club players are really struggling with when they get into the national team, that it's very intense in terms of how much focus you need to have in these training sessions, and that's where they really need to get used to it. So the intensity is just higher and higher. What I also think you can can say is a huge difference from club players to a national team or international team players is that the off-court priorities, you can again expect more, and you should expect more, because if you have to be if you yeah, you have to be able to do the training that I was just talking about with high intensity, a lot of layers to the exercises. You need to do a lot of stuff correct, also off court. You cannot just play badminton and nothing else, and then expect to actually reach a level where you could play at a high international level. You have to do your strength training correct. You need to eat healthy at least. I'm not the biggest nerd in terms of like eating like the exact right stuff, but of course you cannot eat junk food all the time. You need to have all these. Again, it's pretty basic stuff, but it's important that you actually that you actually do them right. And it's an area where we have a big issue in the Danish clubs because there's not a lot of expertise, and we have a lot of players that want to reach international level, but who cannot be part of the national team because we already have a lot of players there, and it costs a lot of money to take in more players. So there's not a lot of expertise on those off court things in the club. So often it's like I'm being asked by some of our players, can I do like a strength and a conditioning program for them? And I can, of course, I've done plenty over my time, but I don't know all the theory behind it. I just know it from experience, from doing a lot. But we are missing we're missing that in the clubs a lot. So I can only encourage you guys to do a lot of education on it. And I'm very happy to hear that Craig told me before I went on that you already had a guy with strength and conditioning, and I think nutrition as well. And it's just keep adding knowledge in that way, because it's where you can really help players that want to go to a higher level if you actually have knowledge, and it's not just opinions, but it's actual knowledge on how to do these things correctly, because it makes it a lot easier for the player to just trust that, okay, this guy knows what he's talking about, then I can focus more again on my gameplay and my badminton, and he can help, or he or she can help me guide me in the right direction with these off-court things. And you can then expect the players to also prioritize it. And yeah, as you can see, I also put fun in there again, and it is just, for me, it is the main thing. If you want to be a very good badminton player, you need to think that badminton is fun. It cannot just be a job or like a hard, tough task all the time. Of course, there's a little bit less of the fun parts in terms of like fun games and stuff like that in training when you're training at the highest level, but you should not forget it. You should not ignore it completely. In the Danish national team, we still do the occasional box game tournament or full box or double box tournament, or some other kind of games. Sometimes we play singles where the scoring system is the one from tennis, just to mix it up and make stuff a little bit more fun every now and then. In our warm up, we always do this English double game as well. So it's just small bits and pieces you put in here and there. And I just really want to stress that it is very important, and it's not to be ignored, because you need to maintain that badminton is supposed to be fun also for players at the highest level. And I can tell you guys, it's not only the way I feel, it's it's the way we've been raised in Denmark with badminton. If you ask Victor, he will say something very, very similar. I went to train with him in Dubai as well 2 years ago for Christmas, and it was just also very evident in his training there that fun is a big part of it. So his warm up with his coach from Denmark was actually to shooting baskets, so trying to score with a basket. So whoever scored 5 first would win. So not really very badminton relevant, and we're talking about a guy who's world champion, Olympic champion, and world number 1. So if he can incorporate that in his training and still do so well, I think it says a lot about it's still possible to make sure the badminton is fun also at this level, even though of course training needs to be hard and not every session is about laughing and having fun. We have very grueling, physical, demanding sessions, but overall it cannot be like that in every single session. There needs to be the fun elements as well. So I hope you will really take that from everything I said here, that fun is if there's one secret to Danish badminton, it is that we focus a lot on that in the clubs at every single level, even at the national team as well. So at every single level. Right. I think that was all the most important things that I wanted to come across. Before we take in the questions, I'll first take some water and then I'll tell you guys why I put this photo on here. And it's of course because I was just talking about fun. This is one of my most fun memories from Ireland. I've been to Ireland many times. I don't know if all of you guys know, but Scott Evans, if you can recognize him, the guy in the blue shirt on the back, uh, he is one of my best friends. I went to visit his parents many times. I've been to Ireland to play exhibitions as well. I played the Irish Open quite a few times, but this particular event where this photo is from is one of my best memories. We went to Carlo, I think it was. I hope I pronounced it correctly. After an exhibition, we played on one evening, and then the next day we had to go to Carlo to be part of this training day for players from the Special Olympics. So like obviously they have different I don't know what you call it, mental disabilities. Um, and it was just like it was so much fun, and to see them there like playing badminton, just having fun, and they thought it was amazing to yeah, to be part of a day with me and Scott. And I don't think they had the slightest idea about who Scott was or who I was. But it's just for me it says a lot about that. When I think back on my career, of course, I think back on Thomas Cup that I won that and some of my achievements. But when I think back, I think a lot about the camaraderie I had with the other players, Scott, for example, but also the other national team players in Denmark. I think a lot about the travels we had to Asia in my junior years. What I remember the most is not that I became a Danish junior champion. It's the bus trip from Denmark to Germany to play a tournament in Langefeld Cup in Germany. And it was just like so much fun, so many crazy things happening in the back of that bus. And yeah, it's all the fun parts that I actually think back on the most and really take some enjoyment from. So I thought it was a very fitting photo. I also thought it was very nice for you guys to see that Scott actually used to have hair on his head. So don't tell him I said that, but he used to have that. It's a 12-year-old photo, I think. So it's most of that hair is gone now. But yeah, anyway, guys, I think that will be it for my presentation. So I think we are ready for some questions, and if
Yep.
I'm not mistaken, then you will kick it off,
Yeah,
Craig,
I
right?
will.
Yeah.
Thanks a million. That was very interesting. I mean, I know you professionally, but I also, of course, used to watch you play.
Yeah, yeah.
So I guess I'll start with my question before we get to everyone else's, because I might not get any then. I suppose my most memorable times watching you play were 2010 Irish Open when you won
Mm,
against Pablo Albion,
yeah.
23-21 in the third game. And
Yes.
also then, of course, I was lucky enough to be at the All Englands in 2012 when you did something a little bit special against Lee Chong Wei, who's arguably one of the best players of all time.
Mm.
So what would you think is your most memorable tournament you've played outside of the Thomas Cup win?
Oof, it's a good question. I do remember that final, by the way, in Irish Open, because I
It
was
was,
losing to Pablo and I came
yeah.
back at the end. And it's safe to say that me and Pablo on court, we don't have the like the best relationship. I have no issue with him off court, but we were always shouting a lot and yeah, provoking each other a bit. And it's one of the wins I enjoyed the most because it was against him, and he thought he finally had me, but he didn't in that final. But I would say, I think the most memorable tournament for me outside of Thomas Cup is probably All England in 2016 as well, because at the time I had so like in 2015 the Olympic qualifying year started, so trying to qualify for the Rio Olympics. And I got a really bad foot injury in my right heel, and I was struggling a lot with my performance and also getting on court. And I was fighting an intense fight with Victor Axelsen and Jan Jørgensen. Uh, yeah, trying to qualify, and I couldn't really do well for those months. I needed to get an injection. I had some time off court as well, and I came back to play in February in the men's European men's team championships, and I played horrible, like so bad. And then had to go to All England the week after. And I know Kenneth Jonassen, who was my coach at the time, he had already planned for us to have a meeting after All England to like talk about like what are we gonna do here because things are not working. But he had to cancel that meeting because out of nowhere, I made the semi-final in All England, something I had never done before. And All England to me is the biggest tournament in the world. That's obviously the Olympics, but I always dreamt about winning the All England. So making that semi-final, it was such a memorable moment for me. It was something I dreamt about for so many years, and given the history I had with that injury, and like finally getting a big result that also put me in contention to actually qualify for the Olympics. I didn't get picked in the end, but that result actually made it possible for me to go to Rio. So I really remember that week as something very special, and I'm still a little bit annoyed with how I started the second game because I think I actually had a chance of winning that semi-final. But yeah, that was an amazing week for me.
Yeah, it's interesting because I mean I was 16 years old when I was watching you
Yeah,
at the Irish Open in Ireland. So uh,
you're making me sound old now. I don't like that.
uh right, so we do have some questions in the chat. If there's any more questions in the meantime, guys, you can put them in the chat and we are going to continue with them for a little bit of time anyway. I've made time to make this webinar slightly longer than the other one, so we do have plenty of time for questions should you have them. So make sure you get them in. So we've one from
I'm not very good at answering with short answers anyway. So yeah,
we have a few anyway already. So I
yeah,
have
that's
one
good.
from Kira. She is asking, when you're coaching the basics that you mentioned earlier, such as
Mm,
footwork, sometimes the players can find it quite boring.
mm,
So she does vary the drills to try and make it more challenging or different. So any tips on trying to make this kind of practice more engaging for the
mm.
players?
Yeah, well, I think first of all, it's very important that, as you say, you already do, you do variations, but I think it's also quite important that you do variation in terms of when you put it in the training. So I think a common mistake is that a lot of people put the boring stuff first or last in training. So if you have to do physical, it's always at the end, or if you have to do footwork, it's always at the start of the training. And that also works well, but you shouldn't do it every time because I feel like you lose the focus from the players a little bit. They will see the start as just something we need to get through to be ready for the later stages, or at the end they maybe not really giving 100% because for them the training is already finished. So I at least work a lot with that, trying to put it in at different times in the training. If I know something boring is gonna come up, maybe do something fun just before it, and then put it in the middle there somewhere. So I think that's one good way to do it. Another thing is, of course, to try and find fun ways to do it, and that comes from just small things. So like with the footwork, if you can make it to a game somehow, where they have to fight, play against each other, it's always a brilliant way to kind of disguise training. The players won't really know that it's still footwork training because they will focus more on beating the guy or the girl that they're fighting against. Because I'm yet to go to a club where the players are not very competitive. So if you can in some way set it up to be a competition, I think that works very well on a lot of players. With the, I know this is like the footwork and physical stuff. With the basic stuff on court, I think it's a little bit more difficult. Again, I would say it's a good thing to like put it in between more fun exercises and more loose exercises. But there's also just to some extent you just have to accept that yes, it is maybe sometimes a little bit more boring. So you cannot make it 100% perfect. And I think as a coach, we also just have to accept that sometimes. I know with club level players that can be difficult, but they're not going to quit from 15 minutes of boring training, or hopefully they're not going to do that. So it's a little bit more difficult with that, but still, yeah, that's a few small things you can do about it.
Thanks, Hans. Yeah, it's good advice because it can be very boring when you say to the players, we're going to do footwork, and they're like, oh no,
I can
you know.
still have that feeling myself if my coach says that. So yeah, I
Yeah.
completely get it. I completely get it.
Yeah, good suggestions. Thanks. From Elan, I have another question, quite different. So, a lot of the
Mhm.
club sessions, and I suppose I'm going to speak mainly on behalf of Ireland anyway, are mostly games practice,
Yeah.
doubles.
Yeah.
So there's players that just want to play.
Mm.
So what do you think is the best suggestion for games to training ratio,
Mm.
throughout the season?
So in general, I think just playing games is not gonna do much in terms of development, player development. I know we also have clubs where it's like that in Denmark, where the players just want to do a little bit of warm up, maybe play a box game, and then just play matches. Of course, as a club, you need to be able to also have that type of players. Um, but I think it's very important to try and talk to the players about maybe do just a little bit of exercises. And I think it comes from them actually understanding why that will take them to the yeah, to a higher level, or why it will develop the game. I can say in general, in any club in Denmark where the level is mid to high, a 2 hour club training session will consist of 20 minutes warm up, box games. Then we do around 45 minutes of drills, and then we have 55 or 50 minutes of matches. So we usually play two matches, so 2 rounds of something like 25 minutes. That's a very standard, very basic club training in Denmark, and it's only, I would say, only low level clubs where it's more like recreational players only, where they do the session differently, where it's only matches, because everyone will have the understanding that this is how we do stuff, do things here. We have to have the drills session first before we actually play matches, and I think that's for club level players at least. I think that's a very good ratio. So it's pretty much 50-50. I do have one advice though. If you have players that only wants to play matches and nothing else, a way you can again disguise it a little bit, so it's still training and you're still trying to develop them, is to play a lot more games with restrictions. So you add a rule to the game. It can be very simple. Of course, like you can remove the back line, so you only play to the service line in doubles, or it can be in each rally you have to start with you cannot smash, so one pair cannot smash until the other pair has hit a smash. Like just small things, restrictions here or there. Say you can only hit the 3 smashes in a rally, um, stuff like that. And it's the main reason to do it is just that it forces players to actually think about why they play shots and how they play shots. So even the rules doesn't have to make a lot of sense. What you just want is to force players to actually think. So again, they're not just playing on autopilot, uh, where they're not thinking about anything. They're just playing. This way, you're actually forcing them to, yeah, to think a little bit about the badminton and think about why they do. Yeah, how do they set it up with this given restriction, or yeah, how do they how do they win with this their given restriction? So I think that's a good way to make a little bit disguised training if you have players that only wants to play matches. I think you can talk most players into accepting that at least one round of matches where it's with some sort of restrictions or a rule change.
I think that's good advice, yeah, and it does depend, and there's a lot of different clubs at different size halls, but we call them, I suppose, condition games. They would
Yeah,
call them on BWF level
yeah,
2, or like decision making exercises where
yeah.
you might get bonus points for doing something
E-
positive.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
it doesn't have to be anything major. It can be small things. It's again just to activate the
mhm,
minds of players actually.
yeah. Okay, I go to the next question.
Yeah.
From Alan, he's saying we have juvenile players coming to us at 10 to 12 years old and not having much coaching previously to this,
Mm,
and find they have developed a lot of bad habits in terms of their playing, how they hold the racket, how they hit, and it's
yeah.
very difficult to change possibly at that stage. So, what is your advice on stuff like this?
Yeah, that's a great question. It is very challenging if players have already developed bad habits. Um, I would say first of all, it yeah, how do I describe that? I think it's very important to try and change one thing at a time and not thinking we need to change everything. Because no one can do that if they already have lots of bad habits. Even if they are quick learners and stuff, if you give them a lot of different focuses, so like you need to change your grip, you need to do footwork differently, you need to play with more height and stuff like that. For me, at least, the experience is that they're very eager, they want to learn, and it maybe it goes well at first, but when you give them too many things, it will it will be too much for them in their head, and they will maybe remember one thing and then they forget about the other two, and then the next training session maybe they are remembering one thing of the two they forgot before, but then forgetting the one they were working on well before. So I would focus at just one aspect of the time or at the time, and also have the mindset that maybe like accepting at first that maybe this player is never going to be high level, but there is actually a chance they will be. But you shouldn't have that what do you say, that ambition. You should just change it one step at the time. And of course, I would recommend starting with the grip change, because if you don't have a decent grip on the racket, at least like knowing how to hold that, you're gonna be very limited in a lot of other stuff. When you have that, I would begin to focus on the movement, because I think that's key to so many things. If you move better, you will give yourself better options in terms of hitting the right technical shots. If you only focus on the technique, well, it's quickly forgotten if you cannot move, because you will be in bad positions, you will be under stress, and then you're focusing on many other things in your technique. Just you're focusing on just getting the shuttle over, or basically just surviving. So, yeah. So I don't know if that was concrete enough, but I would say like focus on one thing at the time with them, and then allow it to take the time that it will take. For some of them, it will all of a sudden go fast, but yeah, it's also about accepting that it is just difficult, and it will take time.
Yeah, it's something that I come across all the time as well, Hans, and we do in Ireland
Yeah.
is bad habits, and do we try and make players make good decisions with the bad habit, or try
Mm.
and fix the bad habit while making good decisions? It's quite
Yeah.
tricky, isn't it?
It
To
is,
know,
but I
you
think
know.
it's a mixture of both, because if I think if you try to change everything, I'm
Mm,
very afraid that the player over time will not find it fun, because it can be very difficult to change it, and then you won't feel success, you won't find badminton fun,
mm,
and then you will lose interest, and if you lose interest, you're not going to develop. So
yeah.
again, I think it's a mixture of of both, and embracing the technique they have, and find
Mm.
ways to still make it fun for them to learn.
Great. Thanks, Alan, for that one. Good question. Owen,
Definitely.
with the next question. Uh, so as a coach, from a coaching perspective, would you recommend any cross-training activities that would complement badminton in the training program, to add some diversity to it?
For sure. I'm a big fan of allowing players, especially young players, to do other sports. Of course, if we are talking about national and team level players, it's a little bit different. You're already at a very high level, but when players are young, and I would say even up to the age of 12, 13, 14, even 15 years old, I would encourage them to do other sports as well, do cross uh, activities that like cross over with badminton pretty well. It's just a good example is myself. I played football until I was 12 every summer, and then yeah, also over the winter basically. Then when I couldn't do that more because I was already focusing more on badminton, when I was playing badminton, our clubs were pretty much closed down during summertime. We only had practice maybe once a week, and it was more physical training. I started playing tennis instead. So I had tennis for 2 months, and I'm not basing it all off that, but all the research we do also both here in Denmark and I also know in Norway also shows that yeah, you develop better athletes and you will have a higher success rate in your sport also if you've been doing other sports when you were young. So I really encourage it a lot. I think it's also it correlates great to something I said earlier that more is not necessarily it doesn't necessarily equal better. So I don't think if you're already training 4 times a week, is that fifth training session, is it going to make a huge difference? I'm not sure it will. If they play football or if they do something else that's relevant to becoming a better athlete, then I'm sure that it will give something also in terms of the mental part that you will enjoy everything a lot more. And then again, I believe that you will develop into a better badminton player. So I'm a huge advocate for that. And I'll almost say you cannot do it too much. The only issue comes if they fall in love with some other sport instead, and then you lose them that way. But yeah, if that happens to a few, then we have to live with that. I'm a big advocate to do a lot of that kind of stuff.
Thanks. Good. No, they're good. Lots of different questions, which is nice to see.
Great.
Another one from Graham. He's asking, what exercises do you think are most important to balance out players that are just playing badminton? They're not doing any other activities. Are there certain muscles that are used more and should be developed for badminton than other muscles if they're getting imbalances?
Mm. Yeah, so since I believe that movement is absolutely key to play a good and efficient badminton, I would say you need to focus on the player's legs. Um, and it's very common that players have a much stronger right leg if they're right-handed or a left leg if they are left-handed. And I'm a very good example of that myself. I think my right leg is maybe not twice the size of the left one, but it's definitely much bigger. And it's one area where you really cannot ignore the training for yeah, for your legs. If it's players that are only training a couple of times a week, then I would say when you do the physical work, hopefully you guys do that every now and then in training. It's the key element I would focus on. Do some exercises that actually focus on both legs, and especially focus on the non-lunging leg more than the lunging leg actually, because just from playing badminton, you already get a lot of strength in your lunging leg from all the lunges you take over time. So in the physical work, I actually, and I've always done that myself as well, I focus a bit more on my weak weak leg and weaker side to try and balance out the yeah, imbalances I have. And I think actually a lot of players they prefer to do it the other way around because you're stronger in the other leg, and we just enjoy doing that kind of work more if you're good at it, right? So yeah, not a lot of players focus on the weaker side. I think stuff like core training, I hear that so much, and I think it's of course it's great and it's important, but it's for me more important on the higher level than at the basic level. On the basic level, it's higher priority to the legs, and then the more the players start training, and yeah, the more they want to grow, they also add the core training and stuff. But for me, at the basic level, it's focusing on balancing out the strength and the speed and stuff in your legs. I don't know if that answered the question. I don't know if I got derailed a little bit there, but I hope it did.
Yeah, if there's any more follow-ups to any of the questions, I'll let you know
Yeah.
if they
All right,
come in.
great.
And another one from Kira. Now we did talk about this a little bit in the presentation, but about how would you develop tactics in players specifically? There's
Mm-hmm.
lots of ways you can do this, and it does depend on the level. But what would your advice be on this?
Yeah, so there's two things I think that are, I would actually say three things I would go over. So the first thing is if you have high level players, a key component is to watch a lot of video, and it doesn't mean that you have to sit down as a coach and watch video with them all the time. I'm sure you don't have time for that because you have many players and stuff like that. If you can do it every now and then, it's great, but really encourage your players to watch a lot of badminton, and not just of other matches, high level matches, but also of their own matches. So if they're streaming from a tournament, make sure that they rewatch the match, because it will just, even if they don't have a very specific focus when they watch it, just like recognizing patterns and see what you do like over and over again, it just it gives more tactical awareness, and it's really an area that's not being utilized enough. Also in Denmark, still actually, we used to implement it in my weekly schedule actually, that I had certain time slots. So it was at one point it was every Tuesday from 1 to 2. I had a video session, so I had to watch badminton. It could be myself, it could be a future opponent, it could be a world tour event match or whatever. But just I knew that time slot, just like you have a time slot of like 5 to 7, you have to go to training. I had 1 to 2. Every Tuesday, I had to watch video, and that way it helped me make sure that I actually got to do it. Because if you talk to your player and say, "Yeah, you need to watch more video," they'll say, "Yeah, yeah, I'll do that," and then maybe forget about it. So like if you put it in your weekly schedule, it will be easier to do. So that's one aspect. Then I think the thing I also mentioned before, like do tactical games, so like do restrictions in the matches whenever you do matches in training. That is even if it's not something that has anything to do with your normal game style or anything, just putting those restrictions in and making it a tactical game, it practices your players' tactical awareness and understanding. And even with players at high level, it can completely like mess up their mind, and like you will see the level drop, especially with the players that don't really have great tactical awareness, because they start thinking too much and like, what can I do, what can I not do? And that's exactly what, at least when I do it, that's exactly what I want, because if you put them in those stressful situations, I would again say they get to recognize it more, and then they will also be able to make those decisions when they go on court and actually play the matches. So like tactical games, tactical matches with any kind of restrictions, I think is a great tool. Then I think the last part, which I think is mostly used at high level, so international level players. I don't see it too much in clubs. Is what I also mentioned in the presentation. This where you add different layers to the exercises. So, for example, so the exercise I described in the presentation, where you have two feeders at the front, one guy working, where it's mid court and lifts to the back, where you have to hit defensive shots from the back with your back to the net. You can add an element where every now and then the player has to can choose to hit a clear instead of just this defensive shot to the net, or every now and then they can hit a lift. Then the exercise changes and it's defense where the feeders are front and back. So like within an exercise, make sure that there's like certain situations where the exercise changes from one exercise to the other. And uh, what it really trains with the player is their ability to recognize when is it clever to do this change, like in which situation is it. So again, it's for me tactical awareness, and it's awareness about when is it a good decision to do this. I also have another good example actually of an exercise where We call it the trans offense defense. So what we focus on is the transition between offense and defense. So it's basically it's 1-against-1. You just play a rally style, but you're not trying to win the rally. Both players are just like playing it over, drops, clears, save smashes, like not smashes, but like save shots downwards. Then one of the players can choose to hit a smash at some point, and they can smash to win. But if they don't smash, the other player will just have to make a short block, and then the player who smashed has to lift. So the other guy gets a chance to hit a smash. They will smash, short block, lift one more time, and then it's free rally. What this exercise trains and focuses on is for the first player to recognize when is the right moment to actually hit my smash. Because if I don't hit the smash at the right time, I will have to give away the initiative straight away on the next lift. So you kind of get punished straight away if you don't make the right decision. And you can do that in many variations. But I hope that it's understandable what I'm trying to get to there. Yeah.
Yeah, there's some good points there, especially and one that's accessible to the guys on the call as well is video. We stream all of our
Yeah.
junior tournaments pretty much. They're all streamed, so there is good access to video of the kids playing. They're
Yeah.
all there, so it's quite useful. And
And it's
then
important for me to say that it's very important that it's the players that are also watching them themselves, and
yeah.
not only the coaches. It's not the coaches. What do you call it? I'm missing the word now. Responsibility, that's the word. Like if you want to develop the players' tactical awareness, they need to watch a lot of themselves play. They will understand their own game much, much better.
Yeah, and then the exercise you're talking about, those kind of
Yeah,
little bit more complex ones, we do cover those for the people on the call on the BWF Level 2 course,
great.
and on our coaches conference,
Yeah,
where we have Chris later this year. So we will see examples of some of them because
yeah,
you do need a certain level of player to do them.
for sure, for sure.
Okay, great. We'll move on to the next question.
Yeah.
Richard is asking, how can coaches add some intensity to the session without pushing the players too hard? Quite
How
edge.
the can I get that one more time? Sorry.
So how the coaches can add some intensity to a
Mm.
session without demotivating the player or pushing them too hard.
Mm. Yeah, well, first of all, I think it's that's also more of the Danish way. I think it's very important you don't do the blocks or the drills too long. So I think when I go to both abroad but also to some of the lower level clubs in Denmark, a common mistake is that when you do defense, for example, you do it for 5 minutes or 4 minutes, which I think takes out a lot of intensity. Um, Both because the players are often not really in shape to do it with any kind of high quality for that long, but also because players kind of just mentally tune out. So I think a very effective way to add intensity is to shorten the period that we're doing a certain exercise. And if you don't want to like make switches all the time, so if you do 2-against-1, that you don't want guys to change after 90 seconds all the time, or even just 1 minute, what you can do is do, for example, something I really enjoy doing is doing 60, 15, 60. So that's 60 seconds work, 15 seconds break, and then 60 seconds work again before you change. So even if it's 2-against-1, if I'm the one working, I do 60 seconds work, 15 seconds break where no one is doing anything, and then 60 seconds work again. It's a much more effective way to have high quality and high intensity in the exercises if you want to do 2 minutes, and you can even do it with 3 minutes or 4 minutes. Just add in the small breaks, to up the intensity. So I think that's a great tool, a great way to do it. So look a little bit differently on like 5-minute training blocks or 4-minute training blocks. Try to divide them into smaller bits.
Yeah, good. That's good advice, and I think it's more realistic to the rally as well. Or a 5-minute long rally would be quite impressive.
Yeah, true, but it's different different approaches, because obviously if you go to Asia, yeah, I don't know if you guys know, but yeah, you probably also have experience with the Asians coming to Ireland. Out
Yeah.
there, they do it very differently. So they do 10 minutes, 15 minutes, even sometimes 30 minutes of the same exercise
Mm,
and the same guy working.
mm,
And obviously they have some pretty amazing results in Asia. So it can also work. But I can also just guarantee you guys that if you put that system in a Danish club or at the Danish national team, you would lose a lot of players, because like we cannot, yeah, we don't find the fun in that. We cannot uphold the intensity. We cannot keep doing it for long enough for it to work. So it's yeah, I'm not a big fan of it, but it's just a different approach, and I cannot say one is better than the other necessarily. But for me, at least, the shorter ones is much better and more useful for someone with my mindset.
thanks. Another one for Ilan. He's asking what types of things, I guess, do you do with talented junior players, or what types of things should you be doing with them?
Yeah, well, a lot of the stuff that we already been talking about, but I think when they're talented juniors, I think a main thing you need to be doing with them is to start figuring out what their game style or match concept is going to be. And with young juniors, they don't necessarily know yet. And I'm not talking about players that are 11, 12 years old, but if we are more like 14, 15, they need to start creating this awareness about what is it I want to play, how is it I want to play, and why is that. So I think that that's a key thing you need to, and that only comes from talking a lot to the players. Also during exercises, like go in and say like, why are you doing defense this way? Like, why are you lifting very, very high lifts all the time? If your game style is more about high speed and stressing your opponent, you need to lift a little bit more flat and try to inject pace that way. So I think that's a very important aspect you need to work on. Um, then of course, there's no aspect that's not important, but the video watching part again, but it's also because I think it's very underutilized even here in Denmark. So I can only say that I really recommend you start doing that a lot. And from my experience is also that a lot of the talented juniors, if you do, like for example, if you have training with them, every now and then, say that today we're watching video instead for the first 30 minutes, put on a match between two of the best players in the world, and just talk to them about badminton. When you're watching the match, you don't necessarily need to have a big plan of um, what am I going to say about this match today. Ask them, what do you think? At 11, what would you say to Lee Chong Wei or Lin Dan or Victor Axelsen now? Just to get them to think about badminton and yeah, kind of evaluate and yeah, analyze on what's going on. So I think that's really an area that you cannot start working on too early, especially with the talented players who has often a bit more yeah, tactical awareness than club level players.
Yeah, a lot of the guys on the call are involved with summer camps as well. So I think that's a
Mm,
perfect time maybe to do that in like
for
little
sure.
groups and stuff like this.
Yeah.
So yeah, nice suggestions. Thank you. Right, so another question from Kevin. He's talking about at the start of the call you mentioned methods to improve controlling the basics and this being really important.
Mm.
So any suggestions on games or drills or what types of practices you should do to control these basics?
Yeah, so the one I talked about before with two at the net and playing this mid court and just basic shots from yeah, with your back to the net. I think that's the main exercise that at least for a singles player you need to be able to control that, because if you're afraid of being under pressure on the baseline, you will stress way too much. Also in all other areas on court or aspects of the match, if you're afraid of getting your back turned to the net, you will not be able to play with the right calmness and control the basics. So that exercise is it's like pivotal. Like you have to really implement that in training. And again, it's very important that it's not, the 2 feeders are not like this far away from the net and just pushing, pushing, pushing. They need to be a little bit behind the service line and then actually move into the shuttle and play a bit more like 80-90% pressure and not 100% pressure. It's not about that. It's about repetitions and doing it over and over again. And even if you do it at 80-90%, you will also be able to do it when it's 100% intensity in matches. I like to compare it to players that are people that are training for a marathon. They never run a marathon before they actually run the actual marathon. You only train for, I think it's up to like 26 kilometers or 30 kilometers in the longest run, because you will be able to push a little bit more when you actually get to the actual race. And it's a little bit like that here, that you don't have to be at that 100% intensity to master the basics. So take down the intensity 10, even sometimes 20%, and master it there. If you do that, then I guarantee that over time you will also begin to master it at the 100% intensity. Apart from that exercise, other ways to do it is to really like chop down the exercises to have specific focuses that are very simple. And I know it's a little bit boring, but just I like to start a lot of training sessions also with a bit of multi, where the players can just do a very simple thing. One of the most underrated shots in singles is lift. So a lot of players have no clue about how to hit an effective lift with the right height and the right quality. So just one feeder, just feeding from side to side at the net, and you just focus on your lifting. It's very basic, it's very boring, but it's extremely important. And to make sure that it doesn't become too boring, then just do a few rows here and there. Do it at the start of the training, do it in the middle, do it at the end, whenever, to mix that up. But it's very basic stuff like that. You can also train focus on it a lot when you if you abide to that 25-50-25 rule that I spoke about, when you are then training or sparring with the guys that are worse than yourself, that's a brilliant time to focus a lot on the basics. So a good example just from today, I went to the National Training Center to spar with the women's singles today. I needed a little bit of match practice. I'm leaving to France tomorrow to play the Final Four. I've been injured in my calf, so I just wanted to play a bit, but not being really pushed into like 100% intensity. So for me, it was great to play with the women's singles. They are obviously world-class players, but I could play with them where I just focus on quality in my shots, my movement, and not focusing on I had to like give 100% to be able to follow. And that's a great thing to do also in club training. If you're playing against someone who's you know that you're much better at that, then maybe play the match without focusing on hitting winners, but just basically focusing on the quality in your shots, on your lift, on your clear, on your drops. It's always much tougher to do it again when you play someone where you need to play your best. But if you can control it first against the worst players, then just like with the marathon training, you will be able to add slowly to that and go even beyond what you can do in training.
Thanks. Good insights. I've no more questions in the chat, but I have a question. Something quite different.
Yeah.
And you were mentioning those exercises that you were doing, where you're like making a decision and then switching the exercise.
Yeah.
Maybe you know this from when Kenneth was there, but what, or if any, types of questions is the coach asking you to get you to reflect on what you've done, or a decision-making process that you've had during the exercise? And that may vary from player to player, but what types of questions would the coach be asking you, and how does it affect your thinking then for the next practice?
So during the exercise,
Or
I need
during or after, is the coach
to.
ever asking you questions or giving you some points
Mm,
to make you think and reflect then on the next time you do the next set?
yeah. Yeah. Well, I think the higher level you get at. So one of the main questions that Kenneth is often asking me, but I think can also be a little bit different if it's a different player. But with me, I'm a very I would say, thinking type of player. So I think a lot, which is sometimes good, and sometimes it's not a big advantage on court to think too much. I think the most asked question he has asked me is, "What do you think?" And that's simply just, first of all, to make me reflect,
Mm.
so force me to reflect, but also it helps him give me better advice because he knows where I'm at mentally, like what my mental state of mind is at the moment, what I'm thinking about, what I'm focusing on, and maybe what he was thinking is completely different. And if he says that in the right at the wrong moment, it will just go in of one ear and out of the other. So I think that's the most used question, and I think you can actually do that also with lower level players because it's a great way of just starting the conversation. Even if you already know that you want to give this specific advice,
Yeah.
it's not necessarily the best way to start by just saying, I think you need to do that, or I think
Yeah.
you need to do that, or this is better. I'm actually not a very strong believer of that. I don't think coaches should give directions in that way. I don't know if that's the right word,
Yeah,
but
like direct
yeah,
feedback.
yeah, it's
Mm.
I'm much more a fan of like letting the player figure it out themselves, and you do that by asking them the questions and then like leading them that way and then saying, yeah, I see your point, but could we think about it this way or that way, or like what do you think about this suggestion? I think that's that's the way Kenneth is doing it. I know you're gonna have Lars Ure on, right, as well at some
Yes.
point, and he's also a master of that, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks. It's quite a specific coaching question, that one.
Yeah.
So thanks. Another one here just from Richard. Maybe some advice for players entering the senior international circuit, which I presume
Mm,
Richard is referring to the over 35s and above with this. So would you have any advice for those type of players?
yeah. Can we? What was his name? Richard?
Richard, yeah.
Yeah. Can you just confirm if it is actually that, or if it's going
Yeah,
from
Richard, can you
junior
just
to
confirm
senior?
if you're referring to
From junior to
sorry, no,
senior, or
he's referring to Elite, Premier, Future Series and above, Future Series and higher.
okay. So
Yeah,
like
sorry.
the change
I
from
thought
go.
he meant senior
Yeah.
as in
Yeah. 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 So it's like going from junior and then into that senior level.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Uh, I think what's really, really, really important, and again, I'm a great example myself, is that you need to be patient and you need to understand that things take time for most players. And with most players, I mean 95% or maybe even more of players. Results doesn't come overnight. They do for Vic Saxon, for Anna Santonsen. They don't for me. They don't for a guy like Rasmus Gemke, who's also world class. But it's very, very important. And why I'm a good example is that I was extremely successful in juniors. I won 4 junior national titles. I was part of the national team every single year from age 13 to 18. Um, and when I became a senior player, I didn't make it past the second round of any senior tournament for 18 months. So I went straight from winning a lot to winning nothing at all. And that's obviously very, very tough. So it's quite important to prepare players that way that things do take time. It doesn't mean, of course, that they should not have an ambition to win and try to win and stuff like that. But it's just very important to understand that it's completely normal, and it doesn't mean that you stop developing. But there's a big difference from junior badminton to senior badminton, and I think the two key elements is one, the physical part. It's very different. It's much harder physically, but also consistency. So in juniors, you get more easy wins in terms of like people make more mistakes and stuff. At senior level, you will get more players that have maybe they have bad technique, but they just know the basics in terms of keeping the shuttle in and getting it over, and they have maybe again a little bit more tactical awareness. So I would say it's not so much that you need to like change your game style completely straight away. It's about understanding that it's a long road ahead, and if you get success straight away, great. But you shouldn't expect that even if you're doing the right things and you're working hard, it doesn't mean that results will come straight away. So I think that's the main thing for the coaches to make sure of, that your player maybe not understand it, but you need to remind them, and you need to reassure them that you're still working on the right things. We're not doing anything wrong just because you're beginning to lose a bit more than you did as a junior. It takes time, and if you keep working on the right stuff, it will come. And sometimes it comes out of the blue, all of a sudden. It did for me. I lost once again in the second round in Iceland International. I went out and got absolutely hammered because I was so annoyed. And then the very next week, I played the Norwegian International. So yeah, I know it doesn't sound very serious that I went and got hammered, but 18 months of losing first and second round and qualifiers was all I could take. Then I went to Norway. I was ranked 137 in the world at the moment, and ended up winning the entire event, beating a former world number one actually in the final. So that was just to say that, like, I've been doing the right things for so long. I know going out getting hammered is probably not the right thing, but it kind of took off the pressure, released a little bit of the tension, and because I've done things real still for the past 18 months, all of a sudden the result came. And I just began moving up from that point. Long answer. I hope it made sense.
Thanks. Or we have time for one or two more
Yeah.
questions. Another one from Graham here talking about cyclists spend a few months endurance level to build up blood vessels in muscles before building up to higher intensities and peaking for races a couple of times per year.
Yeah.
How do professional level players handle the intensity of badminton without breaking down the muscles too much? And do they take a few months off or
Yeah, we
something?
don't take a few months off, but we definitely also plan our training and build it up in different blocks. So some are more intense than others. Obviously, the way that we are able to cope with it is from doing the correct physical training, and we've done it for many years. But if you look at the guys that are gonna go to the Olympics this summer, at least here in Denmark, what is very common is that we do something between 6 and 8 weeks leading up to the Olympics, where it would probably be 8 weeks when it's the Olympics. Sometimes with World Championships, it's a little bit less, but anyway, with the big events, you do different kind of blocks. So you would have, if you have 8 weeks, the first 3, 4 weeks, probably three, would be very physically demanding and really trying to push yourself, but also add muscle, add the physical part. So do a lot of hard conditioning work, so on the bike or running or whatever. Not a lot of guys are running anymore actually in Denmark. Almost everyone is using air bike or biking, because running already gives a lot of stress on your joints and stuff, and badminton does that already. So try and minimize the risk injury. We don't run a lot, but anyway, 3, 4 weeks of that, then you remove a bit of that part, you make it more badminton specific. It's not, of course, there's also badminton specific things in the first 4 weeks, but there's more focus on that in the next couple of weeks, and then you slowly begin to up the intensity but lower the volume. So you train less hours, fewer hours in the week, the closer you get to the event. And for the final week, actually, before the event, you will completely just do like very short sessions, still quite intense, but very short, and try not to tire yourself out. Just make sure that you recover and rest well. And how do we do it throughout the season? Well, it's only possible because players pick and choose which tournaments they want to do well in. So no player at the highest level has every single tournament prioritized the same. Even a guy like Victor, who won 10 tournaments one year, well, he didn't go into every single tournament with this same focus on each one. Some of the tournaments he won, even when he was in these deeper training blocks with a lot of physical work, he's just so good that he's able to win anyway. But we build up the season like that all the time, like hard block, then you go a little bit more badminton specific, and then you just like lower the volume, and then after a big goal, yeah, short break, but then you start building up again after that. So it kind of goes that way, up and down all through the year.
Thanks for that question, Graham. Thanks for the answer as well, Hans. Really good.
That's what I'm here
Um,
for.
If there's any more questions in the chat, just you can pop them in quickly, but otherwise we will try and wrap up a little bit early. Any plan for an exhibition match in Ireland?
It would be
That's
great
the
to come
last
back.
question.
Yeah, I think I played in, what's it called, Whitehall Road, maybe.
That's it, yes.
Yeah. That was amazing. It was a lot of fun, but to be honest, what I remember the best was the night at the Palace afterwards. So I don't know if that's suitable for this
This
call, but
forum. Yeah,
yeah,
I think we
yeah,
closed that place down after you were
yeah.
there, Hans.
Yeah, probably. But that was not my mistake. That's because of Scott. He was a lot more insane than I was. So.
Yeah.
No,
But
I would love to come back for sure.
yeah, I mean, potentially for the guys in the call, we might look at getting Hans over for one of the coaches conference, one of the upcoming years, maybe.
Yeah, that would be great. And then
And
I promise I will also be a little bit more specific with the exercises, what we do and how we do it. I think it's a little bit difficult to sit here and do it. It will be easier to do kind of that kind of stuff in person.
yeah,
But yeah, I just want to add one thing, Craig, sorry, before
sure.
we go, is that if any of you guys, if I said something today that like you would like to get maybe a little bit better explanation of, you can contact me on my social media, and I'll find time to answer. I don't promise I'll answer straight away. As I said, I'm going to France tomorrow, but I promise you guys I will get back to you. So just
Yeah,
if you didn't,
and
yeah,
Hans has a podcast as well, which is very good. He does it
sure.
with Anders Antonsen. So if you
Yeah,
guys are
I
interested
also
in
have my
some
own personal one actually, where they can
personal
ask
one, yeah,
questions. Yeah, a
um,
year on tour with the Vittinghus, you can find that one. So
yeah,
I can
yeah,
also give some elaborate answers on that one if
yeah,
something pops up
and
for you guys.
you'll find him quite easily on the social media. You'll see him on our own from the Badminton Ireland social media. We follow him, so you'll be able to see him from there as well. On Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, I think, and everything nearly you're on. So
True. True.
you'll be able to find him there. Okay, we're gonna wrap up there, folks, and thanks very much, Hans, for coming on. It's really, really insightful and one of my favorite webinars to date.
That's
Really
great.
good specifics about badminton, and it's nice to meet over the call with everyone on it, and some really good questions as well, which is great to see, and good engagement from everyone. So we will be making the slides available to everyone on PDF if they want them. I will send them out to everyone who is on the call if you're happy with that. And
Yeah, sure.
we're gonna
I just need to thank Badminton Photo for letting me use some of the photos
yeah.
for this slide.
Yeah, and we can credit them if they need to in any of the
That's fine. It's fine.
especially on, we will put the video on YouTube to watch for anyone that wasn't available to watch back.
All right.
As well. Okay, so we're gonna wrap up. Thanks very much, Hans, and I'll chat to you again soon, I'm sure.
Yeah, for
Okay.
sure. Thanks a
All
lot
right.
for
Good night,
joining,
everyone.
everyone.
Okay. See you now. Bye.
Yeah, bye.
Bye. Bye.